Hey, my name is Pavel and I scaled my own brand to $7 million under 2 years. And before that, I spent 6 years in the AI space and generated over $26 million with AI solutions. And today, we're going to cover the exact Meta Ads AI system that we use to scale brands to $1 million plus in monthly revenue on Meta. And to be clear, we're not going to cover how do you use random AI tools to generate AI ads that look like AI slop. Today, we're actually going to cover how do you combine AI systems with creative strategy to finally find what's winning in your market and scale your creative production 10 times more so you finally can start producing enough creatives to beat creative fatigue on Meta. So if you're an e-commerce brand right now that is scaling on Meta, that is failing to find new winning creatives, and has no idea how to actually use AI to speed up your creative production, that's what we're going to cover today. So let's get into it. So let's discuss the AI Meta ad system behind $1 million per month e-commerce brands. So the way we do it is 4 separate phases, 4 separate engines. The first one is research intelligence engine, which is the most important one. And the reason it is the most important one and actually the highest leverage AI application right now is because previously we would have to spend days just to get an idea about what's winning in the market right now, what customers are actually saying. Right now, in multiple hours, you can get the data about tens of thousands winning ads running in your market right now. And at the same time, get all the data about what exactly customers are saying about your product, about your niche, which objections they have, which desires they have, what they actually want. So that's why that's like my personal favorite part. It is the highest leverage application and why I see the most value in the application in the first phase. The second phase is creative strategy. This part, we don't use AI. It's all done manually. I do see some people actually use AI for this. They use separate AI tools. We still like to keep it really manual because I think it's the highest leverage point to actually come up with the right strategy. What we do at this stage is just come up with avatars, desires, pain points, and angles that we actually would like to test. And after that, we get to the next stage, which is creative production engine. The AI is also extremely valuable and helps you to, once you actually found the winning concept, helps you to get from idea to the actual ad way faster. And if before you actually took, again, multiple days, multiple weeks, and you only could create tons of ads each month, if you actually know how to use AI, you really can scale your production volume and create hundreds or even thousands of winning ads. And at the same time, scale your winning concepts and your winning creatives way faster. And the last part is testing and learnings. So we will discuss how exactly you analyze the data after you actually use the AI to scale your creative volume and how you actually feed all this data back into the system. So each next iteration actually gives you a higher probability to find a winning creatives. Okay, but before we even discuss the first part, let's discuss what your Meta revenue actually comes down to and what are the reasons most people on Meta actually find it pretty difficult to scale. So I really try to simplify it. So for me, your Meta revenue comes down to 2 simple variables. The first one is your hit rate. The second one is creative volume. So 2 types of brands that I see that struggle on Meta. The first one is the brand that has really good hit rate, but they have problem with volume. So they only produce 5 to 20 well-researched creatives each month. Good angles, it's usually the case when they have internal team who understands the product, who understands the customer, but they just don't have internal bandwidth to actually produce enough volume to scale on Meta. The way Meta works right now, I will also mention it quickly, in the next stage, why it's actually important right now to produce high volume. So that's the first type of brands that actually struggle on Meta. And the second type is somebody who produces high volume, but they have really low hit rate. So they just produce hundreds of random creatives without any idea why these creatives actually should work. They just basically should without intelligence. Usually, when I say low hit rate, for me, it means below 5%. So if you have hit rate below 5%, for me, it means that you actually need to spend a little bit more time on your creative strategy, on understanding your consumer, understanding your customer, so you actually have high hit rate. So about the volume that actually top performing brands are running right now in Meta. So it's like super recent study from Northbeam. What they did, they analyzed top advertisers on Meta right now and how many active ads they're running. So for top 19% of advertisers, they have 100 active ads right now. If you take a look at 3.5%, which is 1,600 brands right now, it's going to be 500 plus active ads. If you take a look at 1.4% of advertisers, it's going to be 1,000 active ads. It's just like a good benchmark for you. So you also get an idea if you actually produce enough creative volume. So if you want to be in top 3.5% of advertisers on Meta right now, you need to accept that you need to produce at least 500 creatives, and you need to have at least 500 running creatives right now. Okay, before we actually jump to research intelligence engine, it's important to understand the way Meta actually works, because it's actually going to dive our strategy, because without understanding the rules of the game, it's important to win the game, if it makes sense. So with the recent Andromeda update, what they did for each creatives, they actually assign one entity ID. And if before you actually could just make small tweaks, small variations of the same creative, and it still would consider it as a new creatives, right now it's not the case anymore, because creatives with the same entity ID gonna share the data reach. So small tweaks and small changes in the creatives doesn't really allow you to scale to new personas and to actually reach these personas. And that's why right now it's extremely important to go extremely deep into the data part and into the research intelligence part, so you really understand different types of consumers, different types of persona you actually can target. So once you actually start creating that, you start targeting these personas completely in a completely different way, different messaging, different formats. So Matt actually considers it as separate entities, IDs, and it becomes way easier for you to actually scale. Okay, now let's jump to the first part, which is research intelligence. That's the foundation of the system. And as I previously mentioned, that's my favorite AI application part, because it allows you to get data from the market. So everything else just gets way easier, because you stop guessing and you actually can start making educated and data-driven decisions based on what's working in your market right now and based on what your customers actually say. So the way it's really important, if you think about what creates a winning ad, for me, at least personally for me, it comes down to three things. The first one is execution. So it's the format, the quality, how well do you communicate the emotion, the message of the ad. And after that, it's the offer itself. So how compelling is it? How much it costs? What is call to action? And the final one is the angle, is basically what is the message behind that? What is one specific reason somebody actually gonna buy from you? And if you don't have the angle right, nothing else will work. That's why this part is extremely important. That's why you actually need to spend time to make sure you understand what's working in your market and understand what exactly your customers are saying right now. So you actually can find those winning angles and use exact customer words to actually describe the problem they're experiencing. Okay, right now let's discuss what exactly we are using, which systems, which AI systems we use to actually scrape all this data and make actually educated decisions when we start creating that. So the first part, and one of the most important ones, is AI review mining. So we have separate cloud projects and cloud prompts that we use to analyze the data from your reviews. And what we try to find is specific pain points and specific objections your customers have. And at the same time, we try to understand which avatars are already buying the product. After we are done with this one, we launch a separate system that does analysis of all the ads that are running in your niche right now. What we want to find with this analysis is basically, again, different personas, different hooks that are working right now, different formats that are working right now, and different messaging types that are working right now. Once we are done with analysis of your competitors, we actually jump back to analysis of your customers. And two favorite platforms for us to actually do it. The first one is Twitter. So we use Grok, and we also use our custom AI prompts to scrape all the data to actually understand what customers are talking about right now, what objections they might have, what desires they might have. Because again, it actually creates for us the insights and the data that we cannot find otherwise, because we basically get evidence-backed angles from all of these platforms and access to unfiltered customer conversations. And after that, again, these two are not as important, I would say. So we mostly try to focus on the first four, but sometimes it's also helpful to spend some time just to research YouTube comments and also take a look at Amazon reviews. Maybe sometimes you also can find something useful to actually double down on and create better angles. So once our AI system actually collected all the insights from all these different platforms, what we do, we split them into four separate categories. The first one is desires, so actually understanding what your customers want. The next one is exact phrases and exact words your customers use to describe their problems, their desires. The reason it's so important because down the line, we will use these exact words to actually communicate the message in that. After that, we try to understand their problems, what are the pain points, what are the objections, and also we try to understand what are different persona types, what are different sub-avatars that we actually can target with our product. An example can be, so for the desire, we may find, okay, somebody, if we were selling a hairline product, so somebody wants to stop checking their hairline every time they pass a mirror. Again, that's the desire we found based on the market research we conducted. After that, we also extract exact words they're using to actually describe this problem and describe their desire. And after that, we also may find that they actually, her treatment makes hair loss worse before it gets better, but they cannot really afford to look worse. So once we actually understand what kind of objections they might have, we also use this data in creative production to prevent them. Because if we don't really understand what objections they have, for us, it's also going to be difficult to sell them. That's why it's really important to spend more time on this part of the system to actually research what objections they might have, so we can address them once we actually start writing the scripts for that. And after that, once we created separate avatars for each one of them, we actually try to describe the desires that they might have. An example can be, I want to stop checking my hairline every time I pass a mirror. I want to stop trading group photos. I want to look how I feel, younger, sharper, and in control. I want something that actually works without making it worse. And I want to handle it without anyone knowing I'm handling it. So once we identified all of these desires, we actually get to create a strategy engine. The way we do it, for each sub-avatar, we create a desire that we would like to focus on. Once we understand the specific persona we are targeting and we understand their desire, we start coming up with different angles that we actually would like to test. And we also use AI in this part. The way we usually do it is we come up with 20 highest leverage angles that we found based on the data from the previous step. And after that, we also ask AI to extend this list to like 50 plus angles, because sometimes it's possible that we will miss something that we didn't really notice, that specific persona or that specific angle that actually sits in the data. That's why it's also cool to use AI here, because you can miss some data yourself. After we actually extended the list, we start doing the ranking for each angle. And the way we do it is super simple. So we try to evaluate each angle based on three variables. The first one is the scope, which is basically how many people have this problem. The second one is urgency, so how urgently they actually want to solve this problem. And the next one is staying power, so how likely it is that they're gonna have the same problem in the future. And based on that, we actually create a short list of angles we would like to test. We start with the highest one, and after that, go down the line. So an example can be somebody who actually wants to be healthy. So obviously, it has really high scope because a lot of people want to be healthy. It's like one of the basic human desires. After that, we evaluate the urgency. It's also going to be high because for most people, it's one of the most important things to be healthy. And staying power, also going to be high, because it's not like you get healthy once and after that you don't want to be healthy anymore. Like, you want to keep being healthy, if it makes sense. So after we actually created a short list of angles and prioritize them, we also try to understand for this specific market, what is the sophistication, what is the market sophistication, and what is the current market awareness. And the reason it's so important, because sometimes I see brands that have their persona really well defined, they have really well defined and well researched angles, they produced extremely good creatives that have really good hooks that communicate the message extremely well, but they just fail to understand what is the current market sophistication. Because if somebody, let's take supplements, for example. So if somebody has heard crazy claims, like hundreds, even like thousands of times, and you make exactly the same claim, for you, it's going to be extremely difficult to sell it to them, if it makes sense. So that's why before we even come up with angles, for us, it's also super important to understand what is the current market sophistication. So what people previously heard about the product we are selling, and what is the current sophistication for them. And at the same time, for each angle, we also understand for that specific persona, that specific desire, and for that specific angle, what is the current market awareness we actually want to target with our ad. Because if you actually want to sell, most brands, they will just sell to most aware, like product aware people, but it's usually only like 3 to 5% of the market. That's why we also try to understand all possible stages. And the reason it's so important, because you have just different strategies of selling to them. So if you're gonna try to sell somebody who's in a way about the problem, which basically means they even don't have idea that they have a problem, and you will try to sell them using most aware ads, it just will not work. That's why for each angle we try to understand where they actually are at right now in terms of their awareness level. Is it like unaware, problem aware, solution aware, or product aware, most aware? We're most likely going to launch a separate video that just dives a little bit deeper into awareness. But for simplicity of this video, let's don't really dive deep into this one right now. After that, we created a short list of hypotheses, short list of angles that we actually would like to test, and we get to creative production engine. And the reason this engine is so important, because the problem I also see a lot of e-commerce brands actually face, they have really good angles, they have really well-defined personas and really well-defined avatars, but for some reason their ads still don't work. And one of the common reasons it can happen is just because they actually fail to communicate this message. And it just comes down to this part of creative production. What I mean by failing to communicate this message, it's usually comes down to multiple things. So the first one is, can they actually emotionally connect with the buyer? Because if you cannot emotionally connect and make them actually feel the problem, they're not really going to click the ad, if it makes sense. And the next one is, can you actually hook them in the very beginning of that so they keep watching it? And at the same time, when we're talking about the hook, it also comes down to two separate components, which is like visual component and also copy component. We'll dive a little bit deeper how to actually make it work. So once we understand the importance of execution, it all comes down to actually writing the winning scripts. And the most important component of writing a winning script is creating the winning hook. Creating the winning hook comes down to, as we previously discussed, the visuals and the copy. When we think about creating a winning hook, for us, it's, again, I'm just sharing what we're doing. For us, it's even more important to focus on the visuals, because that's just the way human brain actually works. We first get the information from the visual component, and only after that, we start processing the information from the text and from the voice. That's why for us, it's super important to understand and super important to communicate the visual component first. And at the same time, what we also do is, once we really understood who exactly we are targeting, we also try to make sure that visual component we are using also looks similar to exactly who we are targeting. Because otherwise, if you try to sell to somebody who is 50 years old and going to use somebody who is 20 years old in the ad, for them, it might be a little bit difficult to relate to that person. So after we actually created the visual component and the copy component. For the copy component, again, super important to use the words your customers are using right now. That's what we also did in our research intelligence engine. And after that, what we also need to do is create an open loop. So examples can be, so we start a story, but don't really finish it. We make a claim, but don't fully explain it. Or we open up with a question just to make them stay for the answer during that. Example can be if we were selling skincare product. So I discovered why my skin kept breaking out, and it had nothing to do with my skincare routine. So for being hook formula, what we are using is pattern interrupt plus angle plus curiosity loop. For building the body, what we usually do is we have three separate blocks. The first one is credibility, the second one is benefit, and the last one is proof. So for each block, we create 1 to 3 sentences focused on a single angle. And after that, we just do a combination of them. Example can be for credibility. So it's founded by somebody who has experience. So if you saw like supplements ad, what they're doing, they're using a lot of doctors in their ads. That's exactly the credibility component of this. For the benefits, we can say, okay, it will save you 10 hours. You will feel wide the days, or you will not really experience that pain anymore, or you will get back your hair. Again, as an example, it can be something like proved by tens of thousands of customers, or just showing them before and after pictures. And that's after we actually combined all of this, we create plug and play body blocks in terms of credibility, proof, benefit, and so on. Okay. After that, the final component of writing a script is actually call to action. Here we also make sure that we actually understand the current state of awareness for our persona. And the reason it's so important, because if you actually try to sell to somebody who's unaware, using like most aware techniques, it's not really going to work. So the way we do it, if somebody is unaware, so which means they don't even know they have a problem, what we will do is just like really simple, like really educational, really soft, just pure value, educating them about the problem that they probably might have. If we are talking about problem aware, it's just explaining them, and again, educational here. Also listicles and advertorials work extremely well. If you're talking about solution aware, you're just explaining how exactly our solution works, just again, so they get an idea how they also can solve this problem. If you're talking about problem aware, which means they know us, but they actually need the proof before buying, we just explain how exactly our product works. So for the formats itself, what we usually do is like 5 different types of formats. And inside each format, obviously, you can have different variations. It's like AI animation ads, stealth creatives, UGC, professional short video, and statics. Our strategy, again, not saying it's like the right strategy, but just the way we found the most efficient, is we usually start with statics just to find the direction and really understand what angle resonates best. And right now with AI, it's also like the part where we use AI the most. You literally can create hundreds of creatives, of static creatives in a single day. And after that, you can just launch them the same day. And in 3 to 7 days, you will get the data about best performing angles. It doesn't really mean that these ads will hit your KPI, but at least you will get an idea which idea and which messaging, which angle resonates the most. And after that, you can double down on it with more complex formats like UGC, video, like stealth creatives, and so on. And after that, we also use AI just to manufacture volume. So just to do slight variations, like changing the hooks, use like AI B-roll, using like new formats with AI just to scale proven formats. And we'll talk a little bit more about this into like testing and scaling component. So once we created static ads with AI, we actually get to testing and learnings. So let's start with the way we actually do testing. And again, each person has their own way to do testing. I'm not saying it's the right way. I'm just sharing what we are doing right now. So for each concept or for each angle, for each creative idea, we use a separate ad set. And for each ad set, we do 3 variations. The reason we do 3 variations is super simple. As we discussed, you might have a winning angle, a winning persona, but you still can fail in the execution of this angle and this persona. And that's why we want to do 3 separate variations, just to make sure that we don't really kill an angle or don't really kill that persona because of one poorly executed ad. That's why we do 3 variations. After that, for each of them, we do 2 copy headlines, 2 body copies. And after that, we launch them and do the test for 3 to 7 days. Again, everybody has a separate process. The way we usually try to do it, if we have time, we prefer to do it for 7 days. If somebody is at lower scale and they just need to make decisions a little bit faster, they can do like 3 days. We usually try to keep it 7 days. We let it run for 7 days, and only after that we do the data analysis. So how we actually do the data analysis? The reason I think it's important to mention it, because everybody in this space has their own definition of a winning ad. Somebody says, okay, for me it's an ad that just spent $50+ on specific KPI. For somebody, it's like an ad that scaled an account by 10% on their KPI. So like it's really confusing. That's why I really like to define it. For us, we use 4 separate variables to actually define what a winning ad is. And for each of these variables, it either can be a losing ad or a winning ad, and it's usually a spectrum. So it's not like binary. It's like how winning it is or how losing it is. So the first one is KPI. So does it actually meet our requirements for CPA and for ROAS? After that, it's the spend. What percentage of the spend, what amount of the spend the ad actually got? And after that, durability, because if an ad actually met our KPI, it actually got the spend, but it fatigued after 2 days, it's not really a sign of a good winning ad for us. The final one is the scale. So if an ad actually allows our account to scale by, let's say, 100% or by 50%, we consider it a winning ad. So once we actually defined what a winning ad is for us, after that, let's also discuss the text system that we're using with producing all of our ads. The reason it's important, because if you use the text system, you actually can get way better idea and way deeper insights that you could get if you just name your ads like ad 1, ad 2, and so on. Because after you actually aggregated all the data from your winning ads, you can do the grouping by avatar, by angle, by format, and find underlying patterns in the data. For example, you can find, okay, this angle, even though it's not the winning ad, but I have, for example, 12 variations of this angle, and overall, they actually spent a really good amount. So maybe I should double down on this angle. The way it works, basically, we analyze the spend each ad got, we analyze the CPA for this ad, and after that, we have a table with persona, with angle, with format, and with the hook. And after that, we can do the grouping by angle, by persona, by format, by the hook, and do the analysis. And the reason it's also helpful, because if you use a system like this, you also can find inefficiencies in your ad account. What exactly I mean by this? So, for example, we can find that this persona is only getting 10% of the spend, but the market potential for that persona is actually 10 times bigger than for the persona that is getting 90% of the spend, which means that we are not really allocating the spend in the most efficient way. And maybe it makes sense to actually double down on the persona that is not getting the proportional amount of spend. So once we actually found a winning angle, what we usually do. We have 3 systems, 3 different ways to actually scale an ad. One of them is vertical scaling, another one is horizontal scaling, and the last one is format scaling. Most brands I saw, they only do vertical scaling. Sometimes they do a bit of horizontal scaling, and maybe like a bit of format scaling, but again, they don't really have a stable system for this. So what exactly it means? For vertical scaling, we just do slight variations on the hooks and CTA. And we obviously use AI for this. It's like super helpful, which also speeds up like the entire process. After that, we do horizontal scaling. Horizontal scaling is basically using the same angle, but just producing structurally different ads that gonna look completely different for Andromeda, which gonna have separate entity IDs. So just taking the same winning angle, but expressing it in new ways in terms of messaging matrix and visual matrix. And once we're actually done with horizontal scaling, with the format scaling, so it's pretty much for each variation horizontal scaling, we also use AI to produce new formats like AI spokesperson video, UGC, AI animation ad. Again, somewhere you can use AI for this, and it really speeds up like the entire process. For other formats, if you want to stick to like previous way, to like manual way, you still can do it like in a manual way. The way we like to do it is once we actually find winning creative, winning angle, we try to scale it as fast as possible using AI, and at the same time launch more time-consuming formats like UGC, because it's also going to take time, but at the same time, we're going to produce the most amount of creatives as fast as possible. After we're actually done with this angle, with the highest priority angle that we found based on the data, we get to the next angle that we think has the highest potential, and do the same process, vertical scaling first, after the horizontal scaling, and the final one, format scaling. Okay, and the final part, which is, I would say, the most important one, is iteration loop. Iteration loop has nothing to do with AI. It just asks, once the system actually completed the loop, analyzing all the data from this loop and actually deciding what we should test next, what are the highest priority hypotheses going to be, which personas we should focus on. And again, I try to explain how exactly we think about it, but just like providing high-level overview. So that's the system we use at Crave AI to scale e-commerce brands to $1 million plus in monthly revenue on Meta. And if you run an e-commerce brand and you do over $100,000 per month and you want us to implement the same system for you, you can click the button below, schedule a call, and we will discuss what you're doing right now, what you would do in your situation, and how exactly we would implement the same system for your brand. And we'll show you what's already winning in your market, what kind of creatives we actually would create, and tell you exactly what kind of results you can expect for your brand from the system. And if it sounds interesting, click the link below, book a call, and see you on the call.